We're addressing an old, significant and highly scientific subject today. What will happen if the moon collided with Earth? You'll definitely underestimate how interesting and bizarre it really is. Hello all and welcome to another episode of Explained Earth. We'll see what will happen if the moon crashes into the Earth in today's video, and do not forget to like and share the video. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to learn more about the Earth. Why isn't the moon already headed our way? Let's start with the fundamental question. Even though the moon is being drawn towards Earth by gravity, which is something we're aware of, it somehow manages to stay up, as if it's being supported by an opposing force. But since there is no other force to counteract gravity, remaining up requires moving sideways, or in what we refer to as an orbit. Every time you throw a ball, an orbit is formed that you can observe every day. That ball eventually lands on Earth, which is the only distinction between the ball's orbit and the moon's. Basically, speed is the cause. If you could toss your ball far enough and quickly enough, it would arc around the globe and return back to you. Without air to slow it down, it would be able to orbit indefinitely. The moon performs the following tasks. Without any air to slow it down, it falls sideways around the planet quite quickly, rotating at 3,600 kilometers an hour around the planet every 27 days. Therefore, it would violate more physical principles than we have time to explain for, and the moon would suddenly cease in its orbit and fall to Earth. So, how are we going to smack it into the ground? In a nutshell, you may alter an object's orbit by altering its speed, affecting the direction in which gravity pulls it in. The solar system's major objects are all remarkably stable now because even slight changes require massive forces. Science states that the moon is large and extremely enormous. The moon could hardly be moved, not even by lighting billions of rocket engines across all of its surface. It appears that only magic would be able to cause the moon to fall. Therefore, we'll cast a spell to slow the moon down to the point where it alters its orbit and spirals towards Earth. The moon will orbit Earth for exactly 1 year before colliding with it, giving us this whole experience. Month 1. The initial days don't really see any changes. Scientists become perplexed when the moon slightly brightens, but the rest of us don't see anything unusual. The moon's only observable real impact on Earth is its tides. Because the moon's gravity pulls back on the Earth and the Earth pulls on the moon, tides are a result. Varied sections of the Earth experience a somewhat different pull since gravity's force weakens with distance. Because of this, the Earth's surface, particularly in oceans, expands whilst the moon is above them and contracts slightly when it's not. The moon's effect swings as the Earth resolves beneath it each day, raising the ocean's water level to rise and fall by about half a meter twice a day. But as the moon grows nearer, the high tide rises higher and higher each day. After first hardly being noticed, the moon has travelled half the distance to the Earth within a month, and the ocean tides have increased to 4 meters. Every day when the tide is high, waves inundate coastal cities. Furthermore, no end is in sight. The tides increase daily as the moon gets closer, covering more habitable land and another city in salt water. By the end of month 2, the moon will have travelled 2/3 of the distance to Earth, and as the tides rise above 10 meters, the infrastructure of the world is failing, and up to 1 billion people who live along the beaches are being forced to relocate. Shipping comes to a halt as ports become unstable. It will take longer to supply less exciting stuff like food. Global communications break down because 95% of the internet is transported by ocean-crossing cables, which are generally unaffected by water but have land-based terminals. However, living inland doesn't ensure safety because tidal bores make rivers flow in the opposite direction, bringing salt water that can contaminate surface and groundwater sources. Countries are left with these stockpiles of resources that they already had, and harsh rationing will start. Chaos rules the cities during the low scavenging tide, and when the water rises, the surviving seek shelter in high rises. Month 3. After 3 months, the moon is close enough to interfere with satellites used for communication and navigation. Even though Pluto is typically too far away for its gravity to seriously affect our satellites, the closer it gets, the more distorted their orbits become. Satellites veer off course as their fuel for orbital adjustment runs out. Months 4 and 5. The tides on Earth have risen to the height of roughly 30 meters and will reach 100 meters in just a few weeks. At high tide, walls of water submerge land, buildings, and skyscrapers, whilst the ocean recedes hundreds of kilometers at low tide, revealing the continental shelf as huge deserts. And now that it's almost been 5 months, the apocalypse has ended its prelude. The tides have reached their highest point because the depth of the oceans, on average, is just 3 kilometers. The oceans could flow up until this point, absorbing most of the moon's gravitational pull, but now the Earth is actually feeling the squeeze of the moon's ever-approaching gravity. These are more tides of rock than tides of water. Massive tensions are created below due to the water's squeeze and the weight of quintillion tons of water sloshing on and off the tectonic plates, which leads to earthquakes that grow in size and intensity. It's hard to predict the severity or location of these earthquakes, yet nothing good can come from leaping on your bed until it breaks. Volcanism occurs on planets and moons as a result of powerful tidal forces. Squeezing the Earth causes large, climate-altering eruptions in Chile, New Zealand, Yellowstone, and other places by disrupting the magma reservoirs within the crust. Within 75,000 kilometers of Earth, the moon is bright enough to illuminate the night sky like twilight. Months 6 to 7. After half a year, the moon is moving into the region that used to house the geosynchronous satellites, where it will begin its 24-hour orbit around the planet. Only half of the world's population can see it, and it appears to remain motionless in one place in the sky while cycling through a complete series of phases every day. The tides appear to freeze in place whilst the moon is stationary above the globe. Half of the world is submerged, and the other half appears to have had its water returned to the sea. It's as if the Earth is holding its breath in anticipation of the worst. You could wonder if the moon sinks deeper, its gravity will overwhelm Earth's, lifting you up and putting an end to your misery. Even if the moons were floating directly over you, you would still remain on the ground since the Earth's surface gravity is around 6 times stronger than the moon's. On the moon, however, things are different because the near side of the moon is more strongly affected by the Earth's gravity. As a result, over the course of the next following months, it begins to stretch forward into the shape of an egg, which causes deep moonquakes as the lunar rocks flexes and transforms. This squish, which is currently hardly perceptible, will soon expand to hundreds of kilometers. Before learning more about the topic, don't forget to like and share if you've liked the video so far. Months 8 to 11. Now that the end of the world has come, we may characterize the months leading up to the catastrophe as everyone left had an extremely awful time. Because the moon now orbits the Earth more quickly than it rotates, the tides that normally sweep across the planet slow down and eventually reverse course. There will be a great deal of volcanism and seismic activity on the planet. High in the stratosphere, vast quantities of volcanic aerosols rise and are bright enough to reflect sunlight back into space. What little light there is rust red, and daily eclipses regularly reduce it. As a result, there is a rapid cooling of the entire planet, and even the hardiest plants succumb to acid rain and summer snow. The time for civilization is up. While an egg-shaped moon is still getting closer, billions have died. Now let's get ready for the grand finale. Month 12. The moon has finally crossed the Roche limit towards the conclusion of the year. At that time, Earth's gravitational force on the moon was greater than that of the moon itself. As debris from the lunar surface begins to descend towards Earth, the moon as a whole disintegrates into pieces and forms a gigantic ring system around the planet by the time it has traveled 10,000 kilometers. Friction heats the atmosphere when too much moon dust falls, possibly causing the oceans to boil. If not, a period of runaway cooling that freezes much of the Earth's surface could start. This is because the rings' vast shadows, along with the volcanic and meteoric aerosols, block even more sunlight. If you want to know more about our Earth and the universe surrounding it, then subscribe to Earth Explained and we'll tell you all about it. Don't forget to tune in next week when we tell you all about the most destructive explosion in the universe.